Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnana Timidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swaparantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamstra Shri Rupam Sagatatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamstra. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Paramami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kupa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gaudavani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunivari Paschata Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasari Gauda Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, everyone. So, welcome to this chapter 14 we'll discuss today of the Nectar of Devotion. So just a review from last week, in chapter 13, Srila Rupa Goswami has presented the 5 most potent angas of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. We heard the most important to being the taking shelter of Guru and taking Diksha and receiving an instruction. And now Rupa Goswami has given the 5 most potent, and Prabhupada says that a small attachment for any of these can arouse devotional ecstasy. That means Bhava Bhakti. Again, the purpose, the point of Sadhana Bhakti is to come to the point of Bhava Bhakti. By perfecting our Sadhana Bhakti, one can awaken Bhava Bhakti, and ultimately Prema Bhakti. We are on this progressive step. So, these 5 angas, worshipping the deity, reciting and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, chanting, serving the devotees, and living in Vrindavan. These 5 are very, very potent. And we discussed with each of them what they do, how they specifically arouse or evoke Bhava Bhakti. And we discussed how Srila Prabhupada has established these 5 as the pillars or foundational activities within ISKCON. So much emphasis on opulent deity worship, the importance of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam in morning Bhagavatam class, of course chanting, whether it's the Hare Krishna movement, associating and serving devotees. So many facilities are given. And of course, wherever there is a temple, that is Vrindavan. And also the beautiful and wonderful facility Srila Prabhupada created in Vrindavan to give us ability and opportunity to go visit the holy dhams. Imagine without such amazing facilities how much difficult it would be for us to even visit Vrindavan Dham. So it is by the great foresight of Srila Prabhupada, he established this whole movement on these 5 potent angas. So we take to them, and even a small attachment, we can have confidence. So powerful they are, they can awaken Bhava Bhakti. So now we'll discuss chapter 14. The title is Devotional Qualifications. In this chapter, it speaks on the qualifications performing devotional service. In chapter 3, Rupa Goswami spoke about how it is an attraction that begins one's process. One only needs attraction. the no prior qualification is required, just some attraction. Right? So even with the bhukti, the material desires, one can begin this devotional service. So we discussed that already in chapter 3. So here we're speaking about jnana and vairagya. This jnana means cultivation of knowledge of matter. The difference between spirit and matter. That is the jnana we are speaking about here. And then vairagya, the cultivation of detachment from matter. This renunciation. Right? So the key issue Rupa Goswami is trying to answer here is if jnana and vairagya are important for bringing one to devotional service. Are they prerequisites to begin devotional service? What must one have mastered jnana and vairagya first? Does one need to have knowledge about spirit and matter and detachment to take to the process of bhakti? And the answer is that it is helpful to begin devotional service. Srila Prabhupada says that it is favorable for achieving a footing in Krishna consciousness. Meaning, to start, it may be helpful. But ultimately, they can be rejected, as bhakti is fully independent. And this is a very important concept, that bhakti is an independent process. And actually, jnana and vairagya, they automatically develop by the practice of bhakti. So what is the prerequisite for devotional service? Srila Prabhupada says in that same sentence that for devotional service is independent on nothing other than sentiment or desire for such service. It requires nothing more than sincerity. So sincere desire is what one requires to practice bhakti. And the practice of bhakti comes from bhakti itself. It is fully independent of all other processes. It is not that by doing jnana and vairagya one can then come to the devotional service. Right? So bhakti, it comes directly from the spiritual world. It comes from Krishna, nowhere else. Jnana and vairagya alone will not bring one to bhakti. You can master renunciation and knowledge of the difference between spirit and matter, but it will not necessarily bring about devotional service. Right? So it can be helpful, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment, but it in and of itself does not bring one to bhakti. So that is a very important concept. And Prabhupada speaks about bhakti is the cause and the effect. And we wonder, what does that mean? Bhakti is what causes more bhakti. Devotional service is the cause for more devotional service. And similarly, like we know, if you have cold air and water, that is the cause for ice. If you have uncontrolled senses, that is the cause for anger. Anger being the effect, the cause being uncontrolled senses. Or if you have sun is the cause for heat. Right? But the opposite is not true. Heat is not the cause for the sun. Heat does not create the sun. Or ice does not create water. It is the cold air and water that creates the ice. So in this, jnana and vairagya is not the cause of bhakti. It is actually an effect. From bhakti, one develops jnana and vairagya. But just as you can say heat does not create the sun, jnana and vairagya does not create bhakti. Bhakti creates bhakti. It is independent. Right? So just knowing matter and renouncing from it will not necessarily bring one to devotional service. So the idea that one must cultivate jnana and vairagya to reach bhakti is being fully rejected here by Rupa Goswami. And emphasizing that bhakti is independent. It is both the cause and the effect. Nothing else is required. So just desire is required to start. So this is a very important concept about what is bhakti. Okay? So now Rupa Goswami then explains what is the benefit of jnana and vairagya, but also what is the dangerous aspect. How is it helpful? Well, jnana and vairagya is helpful in the beginning to free us from the material sense desires. It helps us in advancing in bhakti by removing these obstacles, right? The material desires are an obstacle to pure devotional service. So by becoming aware of them, it is helpful. But removing the obstacles alone is not sufficient, right? Jnana and vairagya, knowing what is matter and what is spirit, and renouncing matter, still doesn't bring us to the point of attaching to bhakti. We can detach from matter, but we still have to attach to Krishna. Right? So, in preaching, we'll speak about jnana and vairagya. We'll say, you are not this body. You are a spirit soul. That is jnana. This body is just comparative air, stool, mucus, blood. This thing, it's not eternal. Give up your material sense desires, movies, all these things. That is all speaking on the platform of jnana and vairagya. But still, that it does not speak about what to do. But it is helpful, right? Because the purpose of this is to get one to detach from the material hankerings. If we are gripping very tightly onto our material hankerings, then we'll not be able to attach to Krishna. So to attach to Krishna, sometimes we have to loosen the grip of detaching from material activities. So it is helpful, but it does not create in and of itself, again, devotional service. Another example is given that if you pull weeds in the garden, it helps prepare the soil and the room for the crops to grow. But pulling the weeds will not create crops. You have to still plant the seeds. So pulling the weeds, the jnana and vairagya, detaching from matter, understanding the differences, that in and of itself won't. But it is helpful because it prepares the situation, right? So, and the reason it is not considered part of bhakti is because it doesn't directly bring one to remember Krishna, never forget him. Remember, the essence of sadhana bhakti, smarta viva satatam vishnor vishmartavyo najatuti, sarva vede nishadyoshyor, etayor eva kinkaraha. That one must always remember Krishna and never forget him. This is the essence of sadhana bhakti. So by just understanding spirit and matter, jnana, and detaching from matter, vairagya, that doesn't bring one to remember Krishna. Right? It can facilitate one's remembering Krishna, but it does not necessarily do so. So that is why it is not considered part of devotional service. It is not one of the angas of devotional service. That's jnana and vairagya. Right? So that's very, very important because, again, devotional service is simply about pleasing Krishna. Plain and simple. What I'm doing to please Krishna. And then Rupa Goswami and Srila Prabhupada are guiding us there that jnana and vairagya, while it is helpful to begin devotional service, it can become an impediment also. Is that it becomes an impediment because it can harden the heart, make a stone-like heart. Right? If we detach from the body and from family and society, it has the potential to make us emotionless. Right? So if we detach our emotions from all of our material sense objects, but we don't attach our emotions to Krishna, it has the potential to make us stone-like. We see somebody dying on the side of the road. Oh, we're not this body, we're a spirit soul. It is their karma. If we have too much vairagya, it can cultivate this mood. This is not the mood of devotional service, of bhakti. So with bhakti, one thinks how to connect that person to devotional service. Right? So the soft heart is a critical aspect of devotional service. Without a soft heart, how one can show love? So love comes from a soft heart, one who is moved by emotions. And we'll speak about this in Raghunaga Bhakti and in Bhava Bhakti. That one is moved emotionally by the beauty of Krishna's names, forms, and pastimes. Right? So it is not a question of becoming emotionless. It is shifting our emotional attachment to material desires, to shifting our emotions to Krishna. Right? But if we just do jnana and vairagya, we'll remove our emotions completely. And that is the dangerous. It can make the heart very callous. So this is the important point that's being made here, is that it is the devotional service actually is dovetailing our emotions into spiritual life. So spirituality, devotional service is not an emotionless state. And we'll see that very evidently when Rupa Goswami discusses Bhava Bhakti. There is an extreme amount of emotion there, right? And a very soft heart that is required to receive and to awaken this Bhava Bhakti. So some evidences are given that I wanted to read. Prabhupada quotes or references in, one can understand me only through devotional service. So in Bhagavad Gita 18:55, this Bhakti Amam Abhijanati Yavan Yastraswati Tattvataha, that one can understand me as I am, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by devotional service. So again, knowing Krishna, remembering Krishna, it comes from bhakti. And then Prabhupada and Rupa Goswami reference another verse illustrating this in the 20th chapter of 11th canto, verse 31. My dear Uddhava, for persons who are seriously engaged in my service, the cultivation of philosophical speculation and artificial renunciation are not very favorable. When a person becomes my devotee, he automatically attains the fruits of renunciation and material enjoyment, and he gets sufficient knowledge to understand the absolute truth. So here in Srimad Bhagavatam, we see Krishna speaking to Uddhav, giving that this jnana and vairagya is not independently required to be developed. It happens automatically by devotional service. So we'll speak about that here in a moment. But so the jnana and vairagya, again, in summary, it is helpful in that it can help us detach from material attachments, but it is not in and of itself independently successful, because we must come to the practice of devotional service. Just another side point here is there's a fine line between being sentimental and callous. Overly attached to family and friends and the suffering of others, or under-attached. Right? So we cannot be blind to it. A devotee is very compassionate to the suffering of others and helps and tries to bring them to the practice of bhakti. But one doesn't become overly attached to the relationships. So it is a balancing kind of act, if you will, between this over and under attachment. Right? And then one final point that is made in the audio is, this material world. The Mayavadis suggest that the material world is illusion. They say somebody dying on the side of the road, that is illusion. They're not suffering. It's just illusion. Everything is illusion. It's all Maya. Well, it is not all Maya. It is all temporary. The devotee sees everything as temporary. It is illusory only in the sense that it is temporary, not permanent. But it is actually happening. It is real, but temporary. So when the devotee sees suffering of others, they don't walk away thinking it is Maya. They think, no, it is because of their separation from Krishna. And out of compassion, it inspires that devotee to try to help that person through their devotional process. So, again, this extreme jnana and vairagya can be a limiting factor in our devotional service. So, bhakti, Prabhupada continues to comment, it is the positive activity, right? It is all the sweet things about Krishna consciousness, bhakti. The do-nots, the regulations, that is not bhakti. Avoiding meat eating, intoxication, illicit sex, and gambling, that is not bhakti, right? Those are the impediments to bhakti. Okay? So the do nots is not technically part of bhakti. Bhakti is only serving Krishna, right? So when we are preaching about the things of avoiding these things, it is that we are avoiding the things that are counter to the process of devotional service. But bhakti is only the act of pleasing Krishna. So we can make sure we sometimes confuse these topics. So jnana and vairagya, they're helpful in our advancement in devotional service, right? But the key is how to bring about this mood of jnana and vairagya. Practicing them independently is not going to bring about devotional service, as we have already spoke repeatedly. So if it's important, how to bring it out is the critical point here. And Rupa Goswami and Prabhupada are guiding us that actually it automatically comes from bhakti. By doing bhakti, one automatically detaches from matter. Remember this drishtva nivartante, that by the higher taste of Krishna consciousness, one automatically renounces the lower tastes of matter. So Prabhupada gives so many examples in the writing here, that we are not vegetarians. We are prasaditarians. A devotee is automatically ahimsa and vegetarian. But being a vegetarian doesn't make one a devotee. So, but by the practice of bhakti, one automatically detaches from all things material. The good qualities come automatically. So we don't have to try to develop them independently. Just by the practice of bhakti, the result will be this detachment from all things material. Right? Even the knowledge is revealed to us. As we perform devotional service, the knowledge will come. Right? Scholars may be studying Shastra for years and years and years, but the knowledge is not coming because there is no devotional service. And thus Prabhupada says one must approach this Bhagavad Gita in the spirit of devotion. Right? So again, emphasizing over and over again here that the jnana and vairagya are not part of bhakti. They are helpful qualities for advancement, but these qualities that are helpful, they come from the practice of bhakti, not by some arduous practice of trying to artificially go through renunciation. So we let bhakti bring us through renunciation. Right? There's no need for any other kind of process. And that is what is being emphasized, that by doing devotional service, they will automatically come out. And then we come to this critical principle, Yukta Vairagya. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur preached this principle emphatically and in very significant ways. So what is this Yukta Vairagya? That we don't accept anything for our own sense enjoyment, but one uses everything good materially in the service of Krishna. So whatever can be used in the service of Krishna must be used in the service of Krishna. And not using it actually is Falgu Vairagya. One may say, oh, we should not use money. It is Maya. No. Money, if it can be used in the service of Krishna, is great. Right? So the renunciation here is that one is renouncing matter for one's own sense gratification. Very important. But one is utilizing matter for Krishna's service. Prabhupada gives the example of nice foodstuffs. You can offer very opulent foods to Krishna for Krishna to enjoy, not for our tongues to enjoy. I have a picture here of Srila Prabhupada riding in an airplane. He was using technology, the dictaphone, to propagate Krishna consciousness. Right? Millions of dollars were collected through the sale of books to construct temples, to give us all the spiritual hospital we need to cure our disease of avidya. Right? So the utility is the key. Everything is already Krishna's. So we should know to use it in Krishna's service, not for our own sense gratification. This is real yukta renunciation, vairagya. Real renunciation means I renounce the use of anything material for my own pleasure, and I use it for Krishna's pleasure. It is the utilization, the utility of all of the things around us in the service of Krishna. That is intelligence. So very, very important. And the benefit of this yukta vairagya principle is that this jnana and vairagya, specifically the vairagya, it develops without hardening the heart. One detaches from matter but remains emotionally connected to Krishna. And this is the essence of this whole chapter. By utilizing this vairagya, yukta vairagya principle, we can get the benefits of detaching from matter without hardening the heart, losing the emotional attachment. Right? So this is the critical piece. And this falgu vairagya, this false renunciation, means to avoid matter. Oh, I'm not going to touch, it's matter. You're in Maya. No, that doesn't work. Avoiding matter alone will not sustain one, because one needs some kind of engagement. Eventually one will fall back to matter if they don't attach to Krishna. The spirit soul cannot remain detached permanently. It needs some kind of engagement. So yes, detaching from matter is good, but attaching to Krishna is the higher principle. And again, by attaching to Krishna, one automatically detaches from everything else. Okay? And the simple concept of vairagya is, what are we going to renounce anyways? Everything is Krishna's. Everything around us is Krishna's energy. You know, if I come to your home and I sit on your sofa and then I say, oh, I'm going to, renounce this sofa to you. You'll look at me funny. Say, what do you mean you're renouncing? It's mine anyways. So when we say we are renouncing everything, it's not like we're doing Krishna some big favor. It is Krishna's already. So this renouncing means I'm renouncing the desire to enjoy it myself. I am renouncing the desire to enjoy Krishna's property for myself. Instead, I'm going to use Krishna's property for his service. This is real renunciation. Okay? And just concluding this chapter, Rupa Goswami discusses that any of these processes are beneficial for performing devotional service or sadhana bhakti. You can perform one of them, ekanga or anekanga, all or one. You can do them, and there are different examples like Ambarish Maharaj, who was performing all the different 9 processes, and Parikshit Maharaj, who was emphasizing the hearing, like that. The point is that one or all are beneficial. Right? So just to summarize this chapter in conclusion, that jnana and vairagya are helpful, but we need to know how to bring them about so that we don't lose our ability to love Krishna. Practicing jnana and vairagya alone will not bring us to devotional service, just as pulling the weeds from the garden will not bring about crop. Okay? We must come to the practice of remembering Krishna and never forgetting him. So if we practice jnana and vairagya and go to some extreme measures, we'll become emotionless and callous. So better, by the practice of bhakti, this jnana and vairagya will automatically come. And one can retain their emotional state and use it in the service of Krishna. The soft heart is what brings about the opportunity to love. And this yukta vairagya principle is the means by which we can practically practice detachment without suffering the consequence of this callous heart. by using everything for Krishna's service, one doesn't have to detach or renounce matter. Simply renouncing matter for one's own sense enjoyment. So this is the purport and the points trying to be made by Srila Rupa Goswami in chapter 14. And now we'll move into chapter 15 and 16, which will bring the discussion to the topic of Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. So since chapter 6, we've been discussing these angas of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. And now we'll move from Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti to Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. Still within the realm of Sadhana Bhakti, but an advanced stage of Sadhana Bhakti. Okay? So any comments or discussion we can have today? Questions?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Just before you started the class, you said, I just overheard the conversation where you were saying there were 6 verses we have to memorize.
Yes.
Can you please tell us which are those 6 verses?
They're in Dropbox. There's a PDF folder. It's the first 6.
Oh. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Prabhu, why is this chapter named as devotional qualification? Because I try to see what is being covered in today's class, and
Yeah.
I just want to see how to connect that to this chapter name.
Yeah, it's I was chuckling because it's an interesting title. The point Rupa Goswami is trying to make sure that we understand is that Jnana and Vairagya are not qualifications to practice bhakti. The qualification to practice bhakti is a desire. Simply armed with a desire, one becomes qualified to practice bhakti. But there is some, propagation of the idea that one must have this jnana and vairagya, this extreme, philosophical speculation and total renunciation of matter. That's not required for bhakti. So that is not. It is almost speaking of what is not the qualification, because he already spoke about the qualifications being, this attraction or desire. So that is why it is titled somewhat in a reverse psychology, if you will.
Okay. Sure, Prabhu.
Yeah.
Prabhu, one more question, Prabhu. This is from the previous chapter.
Yeah.
I think we were discussing to hear Srimad Bhagavatam or to read Srimad Bhagavatam, you need to detach from society, friends, and other material things. So can you explain that, Prabhu, what that means?
Well, again, detachment from society, we can speak a little bit more broadly and then more specifically, to relish the nectar of Srimad Bhagavatam, one must be detached from matter. Just like if you mix spirit and matter, it dilutes it. Like if you have a bowl of sweet rice, okay? And in the bowl of sweet rice is very nice, but you put 1 teaspoon of salt in it. Now, what is the taste of that sweet rice? You won't relish the real taste of sweet rice because you have mixed this salt in it. So like that, to fully relish Srimad Bhagavatam, that one must be free from all of the material attachments. Now, one can begin to relish it while still material attached. That is important, right? There's some taste in that sweet rice, even if there's some salt in it. There's still some taste to it, but not pure. So the point is that one should work to be able to fully appreciate the ripened fruit of Vedic knowledge. We say, we must come to the point of pure bhakti. Now, when we say detached from family, detached from society, again, and it relates to this chapter about vairagya. It doesn't mean that, okay, I'm not talking to you, my family, I'm not talking to society. That's falgu vairagya. That's false renunciation. Instead, we use and develop those relationships in relation to our bhakti. So our relationships with family, our relationships with society, with friends, we try to use those in a way to cultivate devotional service. And one doesn't become overly attached or overly detached. Again, that fine line, right? So we don't take an extreme measure that if my friend is not a devotee, I can't be friends with him. No, we may maintain some civil relationships with the hopes that by some association, by giving some association, maybe slowly they'll come to devotional service. My friendship with that person, allows me to invite them home to give them some prasad. Okay? But I'm not going to I'm not going to break my principles, my beliefs, to maintain that friendship also. If that friend is pushing me to do some activities that I don't believe in, if it comes to that, then I may have to renounce that relationship. If I can maintain that relationship while practicing my devotional life, then maybe there's some hope for that person to come. So it is that balance, right, that we look to understand in that process. Does that make sense, Prabhu?
Yeah, Prabhu. Okay, sure. I got what you said. And also one more question, Prabhu.
Yeah.
So it was in this chapter, in the previous chapter, even if you do one of the anga of the 5, you will be able to reach the bhava bhakti, right? So if I take an example of deity worship, so deity worship to us is more like going to temple, right? So how just going to temple and seeing deity can help you to reach that stage?
Yeah, so Rupa Goswami explains that by worshipping the deity, it helps us unlock the grip to all of our other material attachments and helps us see the spiritual relationship with Krishna more clearly, right? So that the worship of the deity, the Archa Vigraha, gives us the opportunity to detach from all things with it. It's so sweet to see the deity, to worship the deity, so fulfilling that all the other desires just automatically dissipate. Right? So that process can do it by worshiping the deity. It can happen. So by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, one can do all that. But remember also that the core of all of our angas is to come to the process of chanting. Right? This japa of the 5 angas, it is the most potent. In some ways we can say it that way. That's not how it's presented. But we know through our, through the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that it is the most powerful means for overcoming our material afflictions and awakening our love for Krishna. Right? But that's how it happens, by detaching from matter. So yes, you can make perfection by the process of deity worship.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
I have one question. I was going through this. There is a yoga practice may be favorable for coming to liberated material contamination, but they will also makes one harder and harder. So you mentioned some harder and harder. Exactly, I'm not getting. Can you repeat, Prabhu?
Yeah, so the hard heart means that when we go too much into the study of spirit and matter, right, then what it does is we become indifferent to people's sufferings. Oh, you're just suffering, that's your body. somebody, some travesty is happening, somebody is, killed unjustly, not unjustly, but, we think, oh, you're not this body, you're a spirit soul. So it can make one emotionless and hard-hearted. So that mood of compassion can fall away if we try to practice this, extreme renunciation, because we become completely detached from everything around us and everything that is happening to people around us. So that is the hardening of the heart. Whereas the devotee does not become detached to what's happening, it becomes compassionate, trying to ease their suffering. Yes, you are not this body, you are a spirit soul. And the activities you are doing in ignorance of that fact is what's creating your suffering. By forgetting you are part and parcel of Krishna. So my dear friend, let me help you. Remember again, you are Krishna's servant, to ease that suffering. So that is the mood we want to come to. Not just becoming completely detached. Well, that is their karma, so be it. Right? That is what can happen if we practice this vairagya incorrectly.
Okay. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Nandapura.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Pranam.
I had a follow-up question to Kaushik Prabhuji's question. When we talked about the Srimad Bhagavatam, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, we need to completely relish it. You said that we need to detach from the material things, right? So, but and you also mentioned that it's a process. So obviously there is some salt in the kheer, and then you are not completely detached, but you are still kind of relishing little bit. So basically, Srimad Bhagavatam reading is actually in a process, is a part of the bhakti, right? It's a part of the bhakti. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, it's an anga, right? It's one of the practice of devotional service.
Yeah.
But hearing from is critical, right? The anga is hearing from a pure devotee. Right? So you can hear Srimad Bhagavatam from a professional reciter. These sapta kathas that go on all over India. You see them. That's a professional reciter. And Prabhupada writes so much about this professional reciter. Why he writes so much about it? Because it's very prevalent. He says that is not bhakti. Right? So you must hear from a pure devotee. So what is our scope then to speak on Srimad Bhagavatam? Well, we read why it is critical that when we recite Srimad Bhagavatam, why the etiquette is that you read Srila Prabhupada's word-by-word translation, the verse, and its purport. Because by reading the purport, you are hearing from Srila Prabhupada directly, a pure devotee. Otherwise, what is the potency of Srimad Bhagavatam? Right? It has to come from the words of a pure devotee. Then it is bhakti. And that is why, Srila Prabhupada established, even in his presence, he would read from his own purport the Srimad Bhagavatam. So that is how we can still have, because one question becomes how we can have Bhagavatam class then. There are so few pure devotees. Well, by reading the purports and repeating what other pure devotees have said, then it can have that potency. I'm not sure, Mataji, was that directly the question, or maybe I took it to a different answer?
No. Yeah, I think I understood what you're trying to say. Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah. So, Srimad Bhagavatam is definitely devotional service if, again, and that's why Prabhupada writes, if you put in the word professional reciters in Prabhupada Vani, you'll see endless number of references. Because Prabhupada was always guiding on how to hear the different shastra in the right way. And that's why he went through so much effort to present Bhagavad Gita. Right? Because he said there are so many versions of Bhagavad Gita, but not as it is. And then he presented exactly how one should study the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and all these different shastras, so that we can follow it. Otherwise, just reading it does not necessarily make it bhakti. It has to be done according to the injunction Rupa Goswami is presenting here, and Srila Prabhupada has taught us.
Okay, Guruji, thank you.
Thank you, Mata. Okay, anything else? Okay, well, if not, then next week we'll discuss chapter 15. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki. Hare Krishna, everyone.